Welcome to the Marshall Pruitt Podcast and the very first week in IndyCar listener Q&A show of the new year. Hope you all have had a delightful time. Also, knowing what it was like waking up Monday morning, realizing that, oh, well, this New Year thing is real. Actually, gotta go to work and, do stuff. Yeah, we're back. Anyways, even though I'd rather be sleeping, been pretty flat out trying to get a bunch of stories spooled up on the IndyCar side. Also planning to leave early next week for Daytona. Going to be there for the better part of 2 weeks, so lots of advanced planning and work involved there. So busy time, good time, and look forward to knocking out the show here as swiftly as possible. Big thanks to y'all for the questions you sent in, despite not having a whole lot going on to inquire about or draw from. Our friend Jerry Sudduth, who puts the questions together, said we got about 25 of them, about 1,300 words. In the group one is a question about Fox people who might be on the broadcast. Let's see, stuff about Arrow and Sam Schmidt, steering wheels, drivers without rides and sports cars, Christian Lundgaard, how do teams get car counts down, someone's son wants to be a mechanic, what would I recommend? How many cars would enter the Indy 500 with unlimited engines? Simon Pagenaud, his status. Should Colton Herta have gotten out of his car at the Indy 500? Let's see. What else do we have? Group 2, if we get there. How does the steward process work? Charity's close to my heart. What about a 30-minute IndyCar magazine show? And a few other items. So we'll see how far we get. Why don't we say a big thanks to our show partners, that being the Justice Brothers, makers of rather amazing automotive chemicals and lubricants. Been used by the Pruitt family since the 1970s. One of the things that I remember with a lot of fondness at my father's shops out in front. He would have a rack of Justice Brothers chemicals and all kinds of treatments and whatnot. And yeah, being 4, 5, 6, they were about as tall as I was on that stand. So grew up staring eye to eye at Justice Brothers products. My dad used it. Place, I guess, I don't know what it was actually called, but before he built Pruitt's Old English Garage, was at a place, I guess, afterwards called Ruppel's Auto Fixation. I don't know what it was called when he was running it and in charge. And then afterwards at Park Road Sob Service and you name it. So genuinely, truly thankful to the Justice family for not only the support of the podcast, but I can say without a doubt, this is something I have used, my family have used for 50-something years. So pretty cool about that. And then our friends at TorontoMotorsports.com, purveyors of the most amazing automotive racing memorabilia. Talking about t-shirts, hats, stickers, books, models. They do great work with the Pfaff Motorsports folks. Going to see them at a lot of IMSA races. Selling a lot of great stuff, so you might check them out and get all of your modern motor racing memorabilia, F1, IndyCar, you name it, TorontoMotorsports.com. All right, with all that said, let's jump right in, get your questions going here, and get the first episode of the week in IndyCar done for 2025. Why don't we kick things off? Caleb Bensi and Christopher D'Amato, maybe a few others, who knows, have sent this in. It's reported that Will Buxton is connected with the Fox broadcasts. Is that the, quote, needle mover you previously mentioned? I couldn't say it then. Certainly, I got nothing to add right now, because that's what personal and or private conversations are about. So with all that being said, Caleb goes on to say, I think he would be great. And it'd be great if Alan Bestwick, James Hinchcliffe are involved as well. And as the number one personality for IndyCar, I desperately hope Hinch will be there for all the new eyes. I have yet to check in with anybody on the Fox side recently about who's in, who might, who whatever. I can just tell you that if Hinch is not involved, it will be among the biggest failures of this new relationship that I could even try and fathom, because not only have I been a big fan of Hinch's work for a super long time, what he brought to the broadcast with NBC, that modern driver who's been in one of these cars with an aero screen, nobody else in the commentary team is able to offer that kind of experience. That recent experience, plus his race-winning pedigree, Indy 500 winning, pole-winning driver as well, plus he's just phenomenally good, gave great insights from the cockpit, also from a strategy side. He just filled so many roles within the NBC booth. So if he's not involved carrying over that great stuff on the Fox broadcast, I will be, alarmed. Mention one other quick thing related to that, and none of this is critical of Hinch. It's just looking at how Fox has done this on the NASCAR side, for example. They bring someone into the booth as the driver analyst, or one of the driver analysts. Tends to be championship winner or really close caliber drivers. It tends to be, they don't necessarily have to be high profile today, but someone within the sport, within the specific discipline being covered in motor racing by Fox, that you would say, ooh, yeah, Daytona 500 winner, NASCAR Cup champion, or someone right there, perennial number 2, number 3 type. And I'm sure there's some folks that I'm forgetting who don't exactly fall into that category. But Hinch, I think, would qualify for sure. Won, 5 races, 7 races, something like that. Was there covering him when he was at peak awesomeness at, I guess, what do we call them today? Andretti Global back then, and Andretti Autosport. Prior to that, Andretti Green. Hinch was a serious contender. Would just say that I think he qualifies. My only fear is if anyone at Fox tries to apply that finer filter of, no, we want someone who's won the big one at least once or been a champion. That would be something that, quote, disqualifies Hinch. It would also be just the stupidest decision possible, because he's just too good to ignore. Michael Howard says, best to you and your family. Well, thank you, Michael. Back to you. And he also says, yes, cats are family. Well, thank you. They better be, because I had spent $1,000 frickin' yesterday on a vet bill. With the announcement that Schmidt and Peterson have now been completely bought out, will we still see Sam? And is Arrow still working on that car for Sam to drive? I know nothing about the latter, other than seeing Sam in the Aero-facilitated Corvettes, of course, but that would have been a while ago. Sam being as busy as he is with his Driven, his Conquer Paralysis charity, plus his physical rehabilitation properties, all for helping those who are paralyzed, partially, completely, you name it. I know Sam super busy while still a co-owner of the team. I don't know, and I've yet to reach out to Sam, and frankly, it is indeed on my list of things that I need to do here in the new year, just because I want to see exactly what he's thinking, because there's a quick answer here, and it's related to not only Sam Schmidt, but also Rick Peterson. Sam started the team back at a time where it's not as if an IndyCar team has ever been cheap, but he started a team at a time where it was possibly the most economical ever. Was in IndyCar early 2000s. Some of you may know my last season working in IndyCar, that is a assistant engineer, was for Sam in what was Sam's first year as a team owner in IndyCar, Sam Schmidt Motorsports in 2001. Continued on for a couple of years. Wasn't able to really do full-time so much after a little while. Then modified the team, did a lot of Infinity Pro Series / Indy Lights and one-offs or similar at the Indy 500. And who knows, might have gotten out for one or two other races, IndyCar races per year, but went from being full-time entrant to very much part-time, focusing most heavily on top training category, IPS or Indy Lights. And then things started to spool back up. Was able to go full-time in this Davey Hamilton relationship, Davey bringing Hewlett-Packard sponsorship to the team. Rick Peterson then came on board. This is all happening 2012, coming together. They had great success there early in the 2010s, and on and on and on and on. But I just mention all that, Michael, because Sam came in at a time where it was within his financial capabilities, and for those who were helping to support the team, to launch a team, get going, build some momentum, get a couple of years going under his belt. And by the time more investors came in and whatnot, sponsors, was able to put together a full-time IndyCar program again. That took off. Arrow came on board. McLaren came on board. Sam being able to sell his stake in the team, fantastic thing. I don't pretend to know how much money Sam has today. Big difference, though. Back in 2001, on a crazy cost-saving scale compared to today, Sam was able to join in, become an IndyCar team owner. For Sam to do that again, different team, had folks ask, is he going to go to Dale Coyne? This would be Sam needing to come out of his pocket with real money, just because of the costs to compete these days. I don't know if that fits his motivation or his financial sensibilities. Rick Peterson, slightly different, business owner, bigger business owner for sure, very successful Canadian trucking company. If Rick were to have a desire to be attached to something, I'm not saying that could never happen at Arrow McLaren. If he wanted to join back in there on a Indy 500 co-entry or something like that, who knows? Maybe they'd be open to that. But if Rick really did want to be back on a timing stand or centrally involved between himself and between Sam, I would say that Rick, I believe, has maybe the easier financial capability to be able to do that. Let's move on to Eric Franklin. As you alluded, that Jamie Chadwick might have struggled at her barber test due to the physical nature of muscling a car around there. Don't think I alluded to that, Eric. I think I straight up said it. Anna wrote it, and she said it too. He asks, would the new diameter steering wheel just announced make any difference if there is a switch to aluminum wheels for the tires themselves? How exactly does one manage to not incur a weight penalty without changing the size? Okay, so on the first one, a larger diameter steering wheel would indeed help, but we're not talking a massive difference. We didn't just go from comically small to ginormous to aid in applying steering force. So the answer is yes, but it feels like it would just be helped by a couple percentage points compared to, ooh, wow, night and day. As for how would we go from magnesium wheels to aluminum wheels and not incur a weight penalty, I guess it depends on the design. And if you design a aluminum wheel that has less material, removing the aero lip, for example, is a big initiative IndyCar is fond of. If you just simply manufacture the same exact wheel, going from magnesium to aluminum, without a doubt, there's no way it gets lighter. If there were to be a redesign, still something that fits the diameter and width, and obviously attaches to the uprights properly, but if there were to be an effort to modify the design, I would say you could potentially take some weight out. Tell you that there was an ambition when I spoke with the series about this and a belief that it was possible to have something close to a wash, a net zero increase in weight, an ambition or a belief or a hope. Sometimes you share folks' hopes, whether you agree with them or not. I don't see how it's possible. For the folks on team side that I spoke with, they can't come up with a way that it would be possible. But sometimes you go with or share what you're being told, and who knows? If the thing doesn't exist yet, all we can do is hypothesize. Magic Max, look at that. We have someone here who's exactly that, magical. For some of the younger guys who might be shuffled out of a ride for the season, mentions Linus Lundqvist, Rinus VK, etc. Are there reserve driver roles to fill, or maybe LMP2 rides to be had? Just hoping they will be financially okay. So, I'm not aware of either one having LMP2 drives. I would hope that they could pick up sports car work even if they were full-time IndyCar drivers. Linus is under contract. I believe he signed a 2-year contract with Ganassi. I don't know the details, but I would say unless he has signed a release, I believe he would still be under contract with them. In theory, should be drawing a salary of some kind. Is that 50%? Is it 100%? I don't know, but unless something else were to develop where he was offered a drive by another team, at the moment it's just Dale Coyne with 2 seats available. Everything else is taken. If that is not the direction that things go, which would then lead him to, I would assume, ask for a release from Ganassi. In theory, Ganassi's going to have the most overqualified reserve driver on the payroll. So that's the Linus side. On the Rinus side, I continue to hear Dale Coyne Racing is a very strong possibility of where we would see our friend from the Netherlands. So if that were to not happen, I can only hope he would be considered, if not pole position, for any teams considering running an extra car for the Indy 500 that is not already committed, right? Like Air McLaren comes to mind. Boy, they're amazing. Well, they got Kyle Larson coming in. They're, to my knowledge, not going to run an extra car. So there's that. But we'll see what happens there. I hope both of them, they'd be amazing. The Linus and Rinus train, would love to see that. I love both of those kids. But yeah, one of them's in a bit of an interesting position with one team. The other one is completely untethered for sure. And yeah, I know on the Linus side, I've tried to help by pointing him in the direction of a number of LMP2 teams. And I don't believe been able to sign anything to get him into a car. Lundgaard, Christian Lundgaard. That is the topic here that we're going to dive into. Matthew Summers, you say he looks like a hell of a talent and consistently outdrove that RLL car, or at least outperformed his teammates. What are your thoughts on him racing in a McLaren? Can he be the teammate to truly challenge Pato? Spent, 20 minutes on the phone today with a couple of the leaders at Air McLaren for a story and shared with them. I think all the drivers coming into this new season, Christian Lundgaard stands the best chance of being the biggest disruptor in the paddock. Expect all the great drivers, won races, won championships, challenged for them to keep doing those things. But I think that Lundgaard move, he is sneaky good. I think that Lundgaard move is going to be the one this season where we go, whoa, we knew he was good. Didn't know he was that good. Here's where I think this is going to be super cool, Matthew. So Pato has almost all the time been the fastest, bestest driver in the Aaron McLaren family, right? I'm not saying he was never out-qualified by Felix Rosenqvist or Alexander Rossi or Fro or Rossi never put in a better race day performance. Just saying across the entirety of a season, Pato was the clear P1 in the team, rarely challenged by his teammates, somewhat rarely exceeded by them. I would not say that Lundgaard is more talented than Pato. I haven't seen anything yet to make me think, oh my goodness, take him out of that RLL car, put him in a top 2, top 3 team, and this kid's going to destroy everything in front of him. But I do think he is going to challenge Pato in ways that Pato has never been challenged on a consistent basis. Does that mean he's going to out-qualify Pato? I think he will, more often than we've ever seen from a teammate. Is he going to finish ahead of him on race days? I think that's going to happen more often than it ever has. Is this going to be to the point where Pato's having to chase Lundgaard in qualifying in the races on a fairly standard routine? No, I don't think we're going to get there, at least in year one. But I do believe your point here and what I was sharing with them, I think we're going to see Pato pushed harder than he's ever known from a teammate. That's going to be a fascinating thing. Think about Scott Dixon, 6-time IndyCar champ. Think of him as the best of his generation. I mean, just period. There's not even a conversation as to where anyone from the 2000s onward has been better than Dixie. Dan Weldon showed up better than Dixon in ways, in oval driving, in ways that forced Dixon to go, oh, man, I got some shortcomings here. I got to learn these things. And he did. And eventually got in front of Dan Weldon. Dario showed up. Dario outclassed Dixon right away and did that consistently for a couple of years. Forced Scott to deal with that, being accustomed to being the man, P1, and all of a sudden, here comes a teammate that challenges that authority. Also, beyond the challenging of that, it puts that P1 established driver, like a Pato, into a new scenario where you have to see what you're made from. How do you take that? Do you throw tantrums? Do you go ice cold? Do you just brush it off and go, okay, cool. I got some things to improve. Maybe I got to do that by myself. Maybe I can learn from my new teammate to get there. Maybe it's a little bit of both, but okay. This hadn't happened to me before. How do I deal with it? You hope that Pato deals with it in a really good way. Maybe he doesn't. I don't know. But it's a challenge, unlike anything I believe he will have ever experienced. And what I love from this is Pato has been the fastest, most aggressive driver like we wouldn't believe. Hand speed, car control, crazy. Complete driver, that's not something he's been accused of all that often. Every phase of the job, all conditions, the car's oversteering. So what do? Do you keep attacking and wear out the tires even more? He's learned and pulled back a little bit, and he's matured without a doubt. Lundgaard is someone I look at and say, despite having less IndyCar experience, I think despite being younger than Pato by a couple of years, he has stood out to me as a mostly complete package. And so I think it's that side that is going to be the true challenging aspect between Lundgaard and O'Ward. Because Pato's highs are really impressive. He's done a great job of limiting and reducing the lows. He's definitely become way more consistent, race in, race out. Like there's just been a wholesale improvement by Pato here this past season, year before as well, where that streakiness, he worked a lot of that out of himself. But you also look at the fact that How do you start the weekend? Is the team, is the car off? How do you get it back into position where you're really striving more in free practice 1 or free practice 2, and it's just a really positive arc throughout the weekend that builds towards a podium or a win? So he's made huge improvements there. But I do wonder what Lundgaard, who can seemingly be almost robotic that way, where like, wow, if an RLL car was good at all, the guy let you know. What's going to go on there? Is Lundgaard's consistency going to be the thing that makes life hard for Pato? His speed as well. The guy's really quick. Is that going to be a thing? So anyways, back to the central point. I do indeed think I'll be shocked if Lundgaard does not do big things. And he's got a great race engineer in Chris Lawrence, super highly respected throughout the paddock. All the drivers that have worked with Chris rave about him. Got a great, great opportunity in front of him. So I think he's going to be the biggest disruptor. I mean, he finished, 11th or so last season, finished even higher the year before. But I think we're going to see a guy who inserts himself top 5, top 6, something like that on a fairly regular basis. And is Pato now having to fight off a teammate to be P1 on a more regular basis? And what is that going to do for him? I love the idea of where Pato's at a year from now. Because like Dixon, when Weldon came in and then Dario came in, he came out of those two somewhat humbling scenarios with new teammates as an even faster, darn near more impossible to beat guy. He went through that internal battle and process and came out even better. I can't think of a single teammate who has allowed Pato to do that. That's why I can't wait for Lundgaard to take to the track in that number 7 Air McLaren Chevy alongside Pato in the number 5. Why don't we go to Ed Joris? Says, if IndyCar is going to go from 27 charters to 25 here in a couple of years, simple math, he says the only kind I can handle, tells us one existing 2-car team needs to become defunct, or 2 3-car teams go from 3 cars down to 2. He says, I'd guess Rahal and Penske each go from 3 to 2. Yeah, the Rahal one, I think I've mentioned before here on the podcast, Ed, is the one where they've said they have a multi-year deal with Devlin DeFrancesco, which is awesome. But at the end of that, if the team is not decidedly better and or finding funding for a third car is not going amazingly well, that's one where I asked out loud whether that might be a place where a charter gets sold. So that's where one would potentially go to another team or who knows, get absorbed back into Penske Entertainment. I don't know if I see Penske going from 3 to 2. They downsized from 4 to 3 and have just loved the 3-driver dynamic, knowing that Scotty McLaughlin is still young and very early in his IndyCar career, been their top performer the last 2 years. Same can be said for Joseph Newgarden in terms of age. He's got a long runway ahead if he wants it. They aren't paying for David Malukas to be in that second Foyt car just to get rid of a third car whenever Will Power retires. So I don't know if I see Penske, your suggestion that it might be Penske as a one to do that, but I'm with you. I don't exactly know how this would happen unless a 2-car team decided to fold up, or does IndyCar say, you know what, we are just simply going to take the lowest placing charter team one away from them. Take a charter doesn't necessarily mean the car has to go away, but we're going to cut down to 25. Or do we have a new engine formula coming 2027, 2028? It might not be new. Where the manufacturers say, hey, okay, we're not going to do, whatever the number is, 2 manufacturers, 3, the magic number of full-time entries that we're going to support is 25 and 25 only, then indeed 2 cars need to just straight up go away. So, like you, Ed, I don't have an answer. I don't know exactly how this comes to pass. We have Dale Coyne, who is actively working on signing an investor, a co-owner in the team. That would be a strange thing to do in 2025 if you are looking at going away possibly in 2027. And run through a number of the other teams. Meyer-Shank Racing, not going anywhere by intent. Ed Carpenter Racing just took on a new investor. Juncos Hollinger Racing has a investor, major investor in Brad Hollinger, so I know they don't want to go anywhere. RLL, big team, don't think they're going anywhere. Same with Penske, same with Foyt, same with Andretti, same with Arrow McLaren, same with Ganassi. Who am I forgetting? Probably somebody. I'm in that same mindset, so not sure how it happens, my man. Why don't we go to Scott Boyce? My son's a junior in high school and is interested in working in IndyCar. When looking at schools, 2 places jump out. University of Northwestern Ohio, their sports performance racing degree, and the Universal Technical Institute in Mooresville, North Carolina. Is one path or is one school better than another for a career in IndyCar? Said, son is interested in being a mechanic, working with a team. Any advice you have is greatly appreciated. Haven't been to either, so I can't say one's better than the other. I'm far more familiar with the UTI in Mooresville. It's certainly a place that generates a lot of mechanics and crew members into the NASCAR world. So, question I would pose, Scott, is does your son, or are you more fond of getting him... Sorry, y'all, I'm still dealing with a little bit of this whatever thing that I've had for dang near a month now. Is the thought process or preference send the kid to school to go learn about something they know nothing about, meaning scholastic path to gaining knowledge? Or would you be open, or is his personality or way of doing things one that would be more conducive to hands-on learning, really more of a do-it-yourself education? That, just for the sake of sharing, is where, I don't know what the percentage is, but at least in the paddocks that I walk through, feels like it's 90%, if not even higher percent. Meaning, hey, you want to work in racing as a mechanic, go to the track. Go to your local track or tracks. Get involved. I was lucky that my father, who was a former amateur race car driver, lucky that he had a friend, funnily enough, gentleman by the name of Mike McHugh, who was the local Justice Brothers distributor, among some other products, but he was, at least in the peninsula, maybe even the East Bay here as well, he was the number 1 Justice Brothers distributor through his Bay Area distributing company. And so that's where, obviously, all of the Justice Brothers products at my dad's shops came from. Knew the McHughes. I knew him just from him dropping things off, but he was a amateur and lower level professional racer. And so I was interested, wanting to try and do that racing thing, mechanic thing, learn about stuff. And my dad said, well, why don't you go talk to Mike? And so I don't know how far away he lived, not super far from us, but I walked over at 15 or 16 years old. He had a car that he ran locally here in the Bay Area in the SCCA, the Sports Car Club of America. Formula car. It's called a Super V. That's the type of car. Today it'd be similar to the middle tier of the USF Pro Championships, USF Pro 2000 cars, about where it would fall performance-wise. And walked over and said, hi, I don't know a thing about a thing. but like, my dad, and he said I should come talk to you. And all he would do was entrust me, Scott, with a bottle of Windex and some paper towels for the first many months. Clean things, do menial things, but you can go to the track and you can help and you can look and see how we do. Nope, put the wrench down. Nope, we're not trusting you to do a dang thing on this car because it can hurt me. I need you to learn, just absorb, show us that you're serious by submitting and doing the menial things. Help us load. Hey, we need to get tires mounted. Well, do we have a cart? No, but you can carry the tires. Okay, great. Carry them all the way across the paddock to the people selling racing tires and doing the tire swaps on them. Blah, 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 blah. But it allowed me to get a feel for what this was. Cool and amazing to be there with a car and to get to clean it and look at it and touch it and wonder what things do on it and ask folks. Talk to the driver and listen to them talk about what just happened and what it was like and things that worked great and things that need, like, I was drinking from a proverbial fire hose, Scott. Fortunate to have a family friend who allowed me to be in that position. But at the same time, I walked around to a lot of other people, and it's just, men and women who like racing, who have a car and go race it and bring it back home and go to work on Monday and, lead normal lives. Walked around and talked to a lot of them and got to know them. And hey, if I were to want to do more in the future, do you think you would never need somebody who could be a bottom rung mechanic and work my way up? And had folks like that a lot that I saw walking around. This is a long time ago, but the SCCA still exists and races every weekend somewhere throughout the country. NASA, I forget what their acronym stands for, but NASA is the other amateur racing, road racing organization. Maybe you're more a fan of short track, don't know, but would just say this. Definitely go to school. You can definitely learn a lot of stuff there. If that's still the chosen path, knowing that your son's a junior in high school, I would still say, please do a bit of Googling, find out where the SCCA holds events locally, wherever you happen to be, and or NASA, and go there and buy a membership, whatever it takes. I think the annual SCCA membership is like $50 or something. I don't know what NASA is, but do what it takes to be able to go there and get in, walk around, look at the cars, talk to the people, build, hopefully, some relationships. If you're going there, that means all the people there live in and around you. Hey, I'm from this town. Where are you from? Oh, cool. Hey, you're 3 blocks away. What if I were to come over, after school at nights, whatever, when I'm done with my homework to help you try and get the car ready for the next race? Hopefully they'll give you something to clean the car with and some paper towels or rags and get you started off there and let you look and observe and learn. But even if going to school is your preference to get a formal education, I can tell you that the people who are turning wrenches on most of the Indy cars that you see have indeed done this, coming up in a very do-it-yourself, hands-on, passed down education from one person to the next. The championship winning crew chief on this, how's this? Alex Pallou's championship winning crew chief, Ricky Davis. He didn't go to a Universal Technical Institute. He worked on cars, built engines, short track stuff, sprint car type stuff, midgets, I should say, back in the day. Very hands-on. Learned it at the track, learned more from this place going to that place, built up his knowledge. Each step that he moved up, someone else gave him more knowledge. I'd love for you and your son to go and seek that, because if you have that and you still want to go to school, you're going to go there with a definite advantage. want to go to our pal Jeremiah Morrill. Jeremiah, your amazing wife Sarah, Happy New Year to y'all. Says, if we had an unlimited number of engines available at Indy, how many cars would we see trying to enter the race? And with that number in mind, how likely are we to get another engine supplier, a third or a fourth into the series with that next chassis and rules package? He says, May with 34 entries for 33 spots is meh. So, I love the idea of an unlimited number of engines. It's something that could possibly happen if one of the two current engine suppliers opts out of continuing after their contracts run out at the end of 2026. Issue here is this. Nobody that I know of within those 10 IndyCar teams existing and now an 11th with Prema, having bought 5+ brand new chassis, even if there were an unlimited number of engines, we're still looking at chassis availability as the thing. So if we're talking about the next formula, 2027, 2028, new car, I don't think the engine formula, at least the internal combustion side, is going to be vastly different. If we're looking at a new chassis that is not insanely expensive and a unlimited access to engines, I could see 40. I think folks investing, buying chassis, knowing that they can go without any real restriction and try and qualify at the Indy 500 without engine suppliers being that limiting factor that they've been for many years. Not saying that in a mean way. It's just, it is what it is. I think we have more folks finding a way to buy a car and go and try their hand at the Indy 500. So I do think the number goes up for sure. How likely are we to get a third or fourth engine supplier? I think that is heavily based on what, could be wrong. I think what we see here in the early months of this new Fox relationship and the type of ratings that get put up, I think that's going to be a pretty serious determining factor for whether we get a third, get a fourth, get a however many new engine suppliers in. Why is that? Well, I don't think the engine formula is going to change very much. That means that if Chevy or Honda continue, they are certainly going to have an advantage. Anybody building brand new engine to whatever the formula is, assuming the formula is pretty darn close to what we have now, I mean, that's cool, but you're definitely going to be behind the two long-standing established manufacturers. So that's a bit of a deterrent there. Got to look for something where you say, okay, now the time is right to join IndyCar. We are a automotive manufacturer. We haven't been there, and we've said no or chosen to not be there for all the way up through 2025, at least 2026. What would make name the auto brand say, we're going in? Well, you got to believe you can either build something that's going to beat everyone else. Not saying it's impossible, just saying, man, if we're staying similar on the formula, Chevy and or Honda, if not both, are going to be really tough to beat. So that's a big mountain to climb. Might be a pretty significant deterrent. TV ratings, they've been improving. They haven't been amazing compared to a NASCAR. Formula One has certainly been putting up some good numbers, matching numbers, sometimes even better. So give me something to make an auto manufacturer that hasn't considered IndyCar or turned down opportunities to be there. Give me the thing that's going to make them say, okay, well, here it is. We found it. That's why we're going in. I hope TV ratings that are really good and make everyone go, oh, wow, okay, this is a game changer. if we're able to see that early here in 2025, I think that could be the thing. Because for a new auto manufacturer to get in, they're going to need to make that decision here in 2025 if they're going to try and be on the grid in 2027. Some other aspects and angles to this, Jeremiah, that I'll save for the podcast because I don't want to keep going on this for another hour, which I could, but some other things, possible things IndyCar might do, could do that would make it easier for a new manufacturer to come in, faster timeline, lower budget to do it, and so on. So wouldn't necessarily be dependent on how good the ratings are here in the coming months with that move to Fox, but that would really be the third mechanism to try and get someone in. If you go, well, we could do it and it wouldn't cost too much, and we could do it pretty quickly, and the annual outlay isn't insane, well, if we have good ratings on top of that, then maybe we have something to talk about. Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Andrew Campbell, say Happy New Year. Says, I'm wondering if you have any updates on Simon Pagenaud, his health, and what his future in IndyCar looks like. Do we see him move to IMSA? As always, wishing you and your wife all the best in 2025 and hoping to see you at this year's Honda Indy Toronto. Thank you, Andrew. Just worked up my prospective event coverage and travel calendar for the year, and unfortunately, Toronto is not on it. But yeah, I think I'm looking at something like 27 to 28 events again, so going to be fun. Haven't spoken with Simon in a little bit. I think our last call was maybe late November, very early December. I don't know if we're going to see Simon racing again. I hope we do. But I don't know if that is still something that is a super realistic plan or expectation. Why is that? And that's my own words. It's not his. But why do I say that? Age is one for sure. If he was 25, if he was even 30 and went through the kind of really bad damage to his brain, getting rattled around in that crash, you'd say, okay, this is clearly a big deal. We are now a year and a half. I mean, we're, 6-ish months away from this being 2 years since it happened. And he hasn't been out racing, even in small, simple things, touring car or otherwise. We haven't seen that. We haven't heard about that. That's a concern. So if he was younger and obviously dealt with something really significant, you'd say, well, might be 2 years, could be 3. Hopefully over that time, everything will reconnect. Everything will be good and restored. You'll get back. It's another thing when you were already, sadly, on the kind of downhill slope of a full-time IndyCar career. I mean, keeping in mind, he started his IndyCar career in 2006 in Champ Car, I believe. Had a long career, had an amazing career. I don't want his career to be over, obviously, dear friend. But at the same time, you go, well, you have indeed been doing this for a long time. You're at a place in life where, having turned 40 last year, how long do you wait? And also knowing married, kids, everything else, how much do you risk things, right? Maybe he can get back to where he's at 100% and can go racing again. I'm reminded of Dario Franchitti's effective retirement requiring crash at Houston. He'd had enough concussions throughout his career to where after that one, which was terrible, doctors told him, look, you've done all you can. You've gotten all the damage to your brain that you can receive in your career without potentially the next one being the last, right? This is something where you start to fill up the damage in that area, and you get to a point where you go, hey, cup's full, man. The next one might shatter the glass. I don't know if that is where Simon's at. I can just tell you that being out a year and a half, he doesn't have any rides that I know of for this year anywhere. Going to be, it seems, maybe 2 full years since that crash at Mid-Ohio. Not his fault. It's a long time to be out. He'll be 41 in May. How much do you fight to try and get back while having that great risk? It's a hard thing to put past your wife and your children, knowing that you're at a point to where your careers, you've had a great career, is now the time to transition into something else. It's obviously helped Scott McLaughlin last year. I got to believe he could be that person for more drivers in IndyCar. Also believe that, like Rick Mears done with Team Penske forever, Dario does at Ganassi, Tony Kanaan was doing at Arrow McLaren, hiring a Simon Pagenaud to be that driver, coach, mentor, setup, advisor, engineer, bridge. Like, if that's something he wants to do, he should be getting paid a lot of money to do that for an IndyCar team on a regular basis, because he has way too much knowledge, way too much experience for that to go to waste. So I don't know if we're going to see Simon as a professional race car driver again. If that is something he wants to do, and his doctors say you're back and able and there's no great risk to you if you were to have another big crash, then I'd say go do your thing. But I guess I come from this, Andrew, more from a friend angle, where minus that kind of full healing and full clearance, I'd rather see Simon on timing stands. Let's see. Nate Falkowitz. How you doing, Nate? It was a bit random. This past year's Indy 500, remember the announcer saying Colton Herta should not have gotten out of his car after his accident because they thought he could have driven it back due to minimal damage. Do you know anything about this? And if so, were they correct on the broadcast? I do remember it at the time. I don't remember the full stuff about this, Nate. But yeah, I can tell you the overriding memory I have was there was a lot of armchair quarterbacking at the time that happened. Shauna Oakwood, you're going to help ramp down the show. You say, new year, new IndyCar maybe? Well, not 2025, my friend. I have a question about race stewards. Do we have just the two? Are there still Ari and Max? What is the process for becoming a steward? Which calls do they get to make versus what race control decides? Don't know if it's still just them. I do believe they're continuing, but something that I need to ask and confirm. Process of becoming a steward, it's a really interesting one. If we're talking about driver stewards, be a successful IndyCar driver or similar driver who's trusted to make calls on whether a driver should be penalized for something. That's what they do. If we're talking about a speeding penalty on pit lane, we have the great Jim Swindoll, I believe, last time I was up there, was the person with their eye on the little computer printer, that it's actually genuinely like the same kind of printer you would see at a McDonald's or somewhere else, where you give your order, they punch it in, and it prints out the order for the person to grab and get your Big Mac with no pickles or whatever. Identical printer, hilarious. But when I did a tour up there and shot a little something about that, I think in 2023 at the Indy 500, Jim monitored that. And so that's not a decision. That's you were measured to have exceeded pit lane speed limit, come pay us a visit. But if we're talking about drivers crashing, drivers doing anything that might be bad or running afoul of expectations or rules, that is the domain of the two driver stewards, or three, and they then give their decision and hand that upwards, and race control director will take that, Kyle Novak and or someone else within his team, and make that official call. I believe IndyCar president Jay Fry might be the tiebreaker of how things have been between Ari and Max if there's a need. But yeah, they remove the race director from making the calls as to who may or may not be guilty, which is interesting. Different from IMSA, for example. Not as if Bo Barfield there doesn't have great race stewards, driver stewards, and whatnot, but he wants to be the final decision maker, so everything falls on him. Let's see. Why don't we go with JJ Gertler? It says Barry Wanzer was recently on a food-related racing podcast, or a racing-related food podcast. I believe that is Breakfast with Motorsportsers. Says, and mentioned that you and he used to exchange ideas and support around your respective families' medical challenges. I have not listened to Barry's visit on Dinner with Racers, so this is, wow, okay. I didn't know that. Love Barry, by the way. So yeah, mentioned that the two used to exchange ideas and support around your respective families' medical challenges. He's a big supporter of St. Jude's and the Peyton Manning Children's Hospital. Are there particular institutions you'd like to make sure we support? Rooting for you and yours all the way. Well, that's sweet of you. Really sweet of you, JJ. There is a local charity that my wife and I are very fond of. It is something that she brought to my attention, my wife being a Marine. It is called Swords to Plowshares, and it is a charity here in the Bay Area that supports homeless military veterans. And so done a lot over the years, and I'm sure I'll do more over the years to support St. Jude's. Definitely got a couple of charity things that I am needing to get up and going. But locally, Swords to Plowshares is one that we're super fond of. And yeah, the donations there, we've donated a lot over the recent years, by selling a variety of racing memorabilia or whatever it might be. But, yeah, everything from meals to clothing to paying for temporary housing. Obviously here during the winter, things can get, granted, I realize it's pretty nice here in the Bay Area compared to places under 20 feet of snow, but yeah, Swords to Plowshares is the one that we really, really, really care for and want to do more here. And I would say anything that is supporting military veterans in whatever way that they need, that's probably always going to shoot to the top of our list, all in relation and in honor of my wife and her brothers who served, my father served, so yeah. Her siblings and father and my father. Chuck Obendorf, I think you are going to close the show here. And I said we're going to be under an hour for sure. And I think I might have lied, but hopefully we're pretty close to 1 hour. Chuck says, whatever happened to the TV show that Mark Miles discussed? He says, I don't mean the current 100 Days to Penske, but a good 30-minute show with 3 distinct segments. One a visit to a driver at home, then a shop tour, and then finally a Jan Bigas type of tech piece. Did they not realize that the growth of F1 in the U.S. was a direct result of their program? Okay, I'll got to tell you, I'm drawing a blank on whatever TV show Mark Miles might have discussed. If we're talking about Drive to Survive, then maybe, yeah. I have no idea. I can tell you that it sure seems like the time is right. IndyCar-centric or North American motor racing-centric motorsports magazine type TV show. Magazine is just an old expression, I guess, that the 60 Minutes type show or 48 Hours or whatever those types of show called news magazine shows, at least on TV. It sure does seem like with streaming taking over our worlds that, gosh, you don't have to fight to get something onto a cable network about motor racing. You could probably darn near do it yourself. And so I'd love to see more of that. I know friends at Speed Freaks, for example, have been doing this forever. Love them and happy that they're continuing to do it. So it's not as if there's no such thing. Just, I don't know. It seems like we're at a point in time where a dedicated weekly IndyCar something, dedicated weekly IMSA something. There might be a dedicated weekly NASCAR something. I mean, I know that obviously on Fox Sports they had their NASCAR show for a super long time, which unfortunately just went off the air. But half the time that I watch an NBA game on a Tuesday night or Thursday night is because it is on TNT and because of Inside the NBA. And I enjoy it so much, as do millions of others. It is the gold standard for this type of fun, in-depth, learn stuff, laugh, see cool things type show. And telling you, basketball games, unless it's my Golden State Warriors who are playing terribly, basketball games without some sort of Inside the NBA fun panel, newsy analysis, whatever type show surrounding it, those definitely hold a lot less interest for me, which is why I think name your favorite racing series sure seems like that's something we should be recipient of here, definitely in 2025. All right, my voice is going, so I'd better stop this tragedy, which is a tragedy and a travesty thrown together. Thank y'all for everything you sent in. Thanks to our dear friend Jerry Sudduth for putting it all together. Thanks once again to the Justice Brothers and TorontoMotorsports.com. And I'll speak to y'all very soon.